Oh, it tells me that we're live.
Just making sure
Sure.
that it's showing up on our happening now. There we go. So this is muted over here, but if anybody writes comments now, I can see them and I can send them over here.
So. Awesome. Very cool.
All right. Well, to get started, hello to anyone who's watching this now on Facebook, and hello to participants here on the Zoom call. We are talking with Lily Anderson, who is the author of one of the books we're using for summer scares this year. The book is called Undead Girl Gang, and she's going to be telling us a lot about that and a lot about other things. She is actually a former, is it down here in the bio I'm reading here, a former librarian herself, so she's familiar with how things work in these parts. She's also the author of The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You, and Not Now, Not Ever. So welcome. We are so happy to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. To talk about Undead Girl Gang, I have a little PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll get all that set up. Here we go. All right, so these are the two covers for Undead Girl Gang, the hardcover and the paperback. I adore them both. I think they're both just so fun, different versions of sort of variations on a theme. Before we start talking about the book, some trigger warnings. Undead Girl Gang is a horror novel, and while it is YA, it does include some difficult themes, and both in the book and in this presentation. So there will be some talk about death, suicide, violence and murder, body horror, and talk of body image and fat phobia. If that's not for you, I totally understand. I have other books that are much sunnier, but this one's a little dark. So just fair warning before we get into it. So Undead Girl Gang takes place in a fictional town called Cross Creek, California. At the beginning of the book, Cross Creek is in the midst of a wave of teen deaths. In the span of 1 week, 3 girls from the same school, Fairmont Academy Charter School, have all tragically died. The police rule all 3 deaths as suicide, but Mila Flores knows they're wrong. So going forward in this little presentation, I have my own personal fan cast for all of the characters. This is by no means, this is not official. This is not, there's no current movie plans or anything. So this is Maricel Gabriel, who is the cover model from the paperback. You might recognize her denim jacket. I have her as our lead, Mila. So plus size teen Wiccan Mila is the best friend of the most recently dead Fairmont Academy student. She knows that Riley didn't kill herself. Her death doesn't make any sense. She was found drowned in the creek where no one ever goes. It's disgusting. And Riley would never join a suicide pact with the popular Mean Girls because it's also disgusting. Racked with grief, Mila is determined to find Riley's killer, even if it means having to bring Riley back from the dead. Armed with an ancient spell book, an old tube of Riley's lip gloss, and a desperation to have her friend back, Mila heads to the cemetery. Normally, casting spells is like praying, a way to communicate her gratitude to a higher power. Today, she's begging. She needs Riley back. She needs to know why she died. The earth shakes, the candles snuff out, and Mila's prayer is answered. Riley Greenway is Mila's best friend here. She's Sabrina Carpenter from Girl Meets World. Riley doesn't remember dying. In fact, she doesn't remember anything about her last week on Earth, but she's in the cemetery in the middle of the night, wearing her best dress and covered in grave dirt, so she has no choice but to believe Mila when she says she's back from the dead. Unfortunately, she's not alone. Something in Mila's spell must have backfired because the mean girls are back from the dead too. June and Dayton also have a case of dead girl amnesia, but they both insist that they would never kill themselves. If Riley was murdered, then they were too. The Breath of Life spell reanimating them only lasts for 7 days, which means that the girls only have 1 week to solve and avenge their own murders. The spell has one more huge downside. Anytime Riley, June, or Dayton gets more than 100 steps away from Mila, their bodies revert to their corpseified state, turning them into real, live, undead zombies. And the photo here on the left is Books with Samantha on Instagram, who was so kind as to cosplay as Riley for Halloween like 2 years ago. It's just my favorite thing that's ever happened. So I had to share it here. She even has the little bit of Riley's brain that shows when Riley's in her zombie state. Excellent details. Because of the 100 steps rule, the undead girls can't go home again. Letting their families see their death wounds seems like a recipe for disaster, but they can't live in the cemetery or the nearby 24-hour Walmart. Mila moves them into the abandoned house at the edge of town where she and Riley used to hide their magical supplies. Magic is real, and she's temporarily risen the dead, but it's still a school night. Mila has to go back to Fairmont Academy and face the school's celebration of life memorial service for Riley, June, and Dayton. Which brings us to our love interest, cast here as Timothy Chalamet. Mila isn't the only person hesitant to return to school for the celebration of life service. Her longtime crush and Riley's older brother, Xander, is also back on campus for the first time since his sister died. Seeing him grieving for the death of his sister and his friends makes Mila wish she could tell him that all of the dead girls are safe, if a little zombie-ish, in a house in the woods. But he thinks she's lost her mind. And for the first time, he's actually looking at her like she's more than just his sister's fat witch friend. Grief might just be the thing that draws them together. Unfortunately, the living dead girls have zero interest in Mila's burgeoning love life, disguised in hats and scarves that mostly cover their zombie parts. They sneak into their own memorial service and start searching for clues as to who could have killed them. Mila just has to follow the screens to find them. Which leads us to our suspects. The girls only have 1 week to figure out who had the motive and the means to kill all 3 of them. So, was it the Nouns Clique, Angel, Sky, Diamond, and Dawn, the Fairmont Academy debate team, and the first people June came back to haunt at the celebration of life service, Dr. Miller, the new school psychologist who seems to show up everywhere Mila goes, Caleb Treadwell, the principal's stepson, and the most likely to win the prestigious Roush Scholarship now that 3 honor students are dead, who was recently spotted wearing June's Tiffany monogram necklace. Anaya Dorsey is the sole journalist at Fairmont Academy's newspaper, always on the hunt for a scoop and sticking her nose into other people's business, who wrote a rhyming poem for Riley's funeral program. And there's Toby, who here is Queen Witch, Stevie Nicks, the owner of the Wiccan supply store in town and the leader of a biker gang of older witches who tells Mila that some people just have to die early. I'm not going to reveal the ending. So to sum up, Undead Girl Gang is full of body horror, grief, and mean girls getting a second chance at life. It's a dark comedy in the vein of 90s movies of my childhood, like The Craft, Heathers, Jawbreaker, and Death Becomes Her. It seeks to answer questions about whether people are all good or bad, and whether the people we lose ever really leave us. If you enjoy Undead Girl Gang, there are some other books that I think that you'll like. There's When We Were Magic by Sarah Gailey, where 16 witch best friends come together to cover up an accidental murder on prom night. That starts with one of the most graphic and hilarious deaths I've ever read in my life. Then there's These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling, which takes place in Salem, Massachusetts, and a group of queer Wiccans are searching for the big bad blood witch that's wreaking havoc in their town. And there's Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, in which a trans boy witch accidentally summons a ghost and then falls in love with him. And if you would like other books by me, this is my current catalog. There's The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You, which is Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, set in a high school for geniuses. There's Not Now, Not Ever, which is a companion to that, which is Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, set at a summer camp where high schoolers are competing for a college scholarship. In October, I have my first crossover young adult book. The throwback list is about 3 high school best friends / enemies who reunite in their hometown 10 years later to work through a bucket list that they wrote in high school. It's out on October 5th. And in April of next year, I have my next young adult novel, which is horror adjacent. It's called Scouts Honor, and it's about the Ladybirds, who are a secret society of rip-off Girl Scouts who hunt monsters that tear through reality to eat the emotions and sometimes the bodies of unsuspecting humans.
The book is really, really good, people. We already had, in our summer reading program, we had a book discussion going on about Undead Girl Gang, and good, strong opinions were shared about, we were trying to talk about themes and various things. And as you said, when you were writing, you were trying to express ask the question whether people were all good or all bad. I remember one young man had strong feelings about Mila, like at one point leaving her zombified friend when her friend couldn't follow her and couldn't go anywhere. She was trapped and had no recourse. He was not pleased.
Yeah. No, it's really important to me in writing teen characters that they aren't making only good choices or only bad choices. You know, we're all a combination of both, but especially when you're 16 and you're still learning what it means to be a person and what kind of person you want to be. And so there are points in the story where Mila is really magnanimous and she brings the dead girls food. And if, you know, they're craving burgers, she'll bring them burgers. But then there's also times where she's like, I'm gonna go on a date, bye. Like she just completely leaves. And she has to sort of learn that, you know, the mean girls who were so terrible to her think of themselves the same way. They, you know, they don't think that they're the worst, but sometimes they are because they're just not thinking about how their behavior affects other people. And Mila has to learn that everyone's behavior affects other people, including her own. Starting with deciding to bring people back from the dead who did not ask for it.
Mm-hmm. I did tell him that he raised a good question in that discussion, and I said if I had the opportunity, so I ask you now, without any spoilers, there's a particular scene close to the end of the book where a great deal of noise is happening around them, and he wondered just how remote was this house that no one in town seemed to have the urge to go investigate.
It's fairly remote, I would say. The abandoned house, the benefit of it is that it is sort of on the outskirts of town, deep in like the woods, adjacent to a park. And so a great deal of noise, I think, would mostly be seen as like maybe firecrackers.
That was what I took note. So this is not your first book, but you said it was your first horror book.
Yeah.
How long have you been writing? We've got a lot of young writers in our community. So when did you start?
I've been writing since I learned to write, since I learned my letters. The first thing I remember writing is I wrote a poem in the first grade about olives that won the local county writing award. And I got to have like a fancy poofy white dress and go sit and get an award for it. And I was just utterly hooked from then on. I was just always writing poetry and short stories. And then once I hit like middle school, just fan fiction for ages. And then I started, I think the first book I finished that I was like, I'm going to write this for me was my senior year of high school. I was on independent study and my counselor was very kind to be like, well, you like books, you like writing. So why don't you just have a whole class that's just you trying to write as much of a book as you can. And so I was like 16 years old and was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I wrote an entire book that was terrible, but I was so proud. And I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to finish something. And so since then I was like, and then now it's just nonstop books. I always have something in the works, whether it's for publishing or not, though more often than not it is for publishing.
I imagine the schedule gets pretty full. This is your first published horror. Have you ever written any horror before this?
I haven't. This really was my first. It was really a sort of an experiment for me because I started, my first two books are both their retellings and the rom-coms. And so they're just the total opposite where it's happily ever after. Everyone's doing great. But I read a lot of dark books. I read a lot of horror. I watch a lot of like intense, gritty mystery shows. And so I was like, I wonder if I could do that in a book. I wonder if I could do sort of a dark comedy horror as a book. And so that's why so many of the inspirations for the book are movies, because they were all things that I was like, well, I don't know a book like this. So I'll try to do this and then see what happens. And I really wasn't sure that it would be good enough to publish because I was like, it's so far out of my wheelhouse. And so at the beginning of my career, my editors were like, oh yeah, you write like cute romances. And I was like, okay, but what if around a cute romance was a bunch of murder and just as much gross body horror as I can stand, because I'm also a scaredy cat. And so it was like, can I write a book that freaks me out, but I can keep going? And the answer is yes.
You should take a moment here and remind people who are with us on the Zoom call or who are watching on Facebook, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, just go ahead and pop them in the chat here or there, and I will pass them on and she'll be able to answer them for you. In the meantime, let me ask, what was the hardest part then of writing this particular book?
The hardest part is the rules that I set up for myself, which is the worst thing about being a writer, because whenever it gets hard, you're like, I did this. There's no one else to blame. These are my rules. And so I knew going into the book that if you start with dead girls, you're going to end with dead girls. It wasn't going to be when I write a book, it's happily ever after. Everything's great. And so, the first scene is a funeral. It's Riley's funeral. And I was like, well, she's going to have to die again. She's going to have to stay dead. And so throughout the book, as Mila's having this great time having her friend back, I'm sitting there writing and being like, oh no, but you're going to have to say goodbye again. This isn't, you have your friend back for now. And so there's a lot of that in the book where the girls are like, well, we're back. And Mila's like, kind of. And that's so much of me being like, don't get too attached, because you can learn, these people can be your friends and you can love them. But at the end of the book, you're gonna have to say goodbye. And I can't change the rules, as much as I was kind of like, well, what if there was another spell that just kept him going? And I was like, no, they gotta go. Their time has passed. And that's part of the 100 steps rule that's in the book, where when they're too far away from Mila, they go back to kind of having their all of their death wounds and everything, just as a reminder of like they're not well. They're back by magic. And so that was hard. It was hard, you know, it was emotionally hard when I'm used to sort of like building to like, and then there's a big kiss at a fancy dance. And it's like, oh, this was definitely the opposite, where it was like, oh no, and now we're gonna have like there's the last scene before they have to go away. I was just like, what do you do? What do you do knowing it's your last day with these people who are now your best friends, and you have to just let them go? And so that took forever to write, because I was like, what's good enough?
We talk, when we're talking about writing, a lot of people use the terms planner or a pantser, either someone who plans out the whole thing or someone who writes by the seat of their pants. Are you more of a planner or a pantser when it comes down to it?
I'm definitely a planner. I love my outline. It's my best friend. I stick to it whenever it's the first thing I do. If I'm starting a book, I'll pants chapter 1, and then immediately I'll be like, okay, and now a huge outline, like, I mean, and like a full synopsis. I'll write, 10, 12 pages of outline. And sometimes I stick to it. and sometimes I don't. Writing mysteries, I will always hit a point where I'm like, but what if I change to, what if I change who the killer was? What if I change, and so my outline is always there for me to go back to, of like, well, this was how it was going to work out. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I just got a great idea, and I'm just going to go with it and see what happens, and see if I can kind of force it to meet the outline somewhere else. Although in this book I did, anytime I was like, I think I'm going to change the killer, it was like, no, you had an idea. You're going to stick to your plan. But my outline is there for me to stay on track, because otherwise I will just write what if scenarios and the book will never finish.
How long did it take you to go from like conceiving of the idea all the way to having finished the story? How long did this one take?
This book is the fastest I've ever written anything, and which is so detrimental, because now I think like, well, I could write a book in this long because Undead Girl Gang only took this long. But it's really the like, when authors are like, the book just flowed through me, I just had to sit at the computer. That was this book. Every other book was hard. This book I wrote in about 6 weeks, which is because I did nothing else. I would wake up, I still had a day job then. So I would wake up early and I would write. And then I would come home from work and I would write. And on weekends, I was getting up before the sun. I would get up at like 5:30 in the morning and go to a Starbucks the second it opened, and just sit in the lobby for like 3 or 4 hours and just write through chapters. It was a wild experience. Normally my books take about 3 months. That's for a first draft. And then I send it to my editor and they're like, okay, fix all of Act 2. And okay. And that takes another 2 months. But this book really it flew in a way that I'm still not sure why. I don't know. I guess it's just because I was so excited at the prospect of doing something so different. It was also the first book that I wrote for publication that wasn't a retelling. So it was a little less anchored by the outline, even because it was mine. My first book was a Shakespeare retelling, and my second book was an Oscar Wilde retelling. And those, I'm like, well, they know what they're doing. I'll keep to that. And this book, I was like, it could do anything.
So since this one flew fast, I assume that you didn't have to deal with any kind of writer's block in the writing of it. What do you
Not in this one.
What do you typically do when you run into that?
Writer's block can be any number of things for me. Sometimes it's trying too hard to like force my outline. So I'm like, but I want it to go like this. And the book is like, I don't care what you want. I want to go in this direction. Sometimes it's getting too locked into my routine, because I will be like, I write I write between 8 a.m. and noon, and that's it. And then I'll have books that are like, okay, well, I want to get written at 9 o'clock at night. So what are you going to do now? So for me, writer's block really is trying new things, just writing in different locations, pandemic allowing these days. But I usually am like, okay, writing on my couch isn't working. So I write in my local libraries as often as I can. I will write in any of the libraries in my county. I'll just like drive from one to the next for the best spot, or coffee shops. And sometimes it's just reading so much, reading until I'm thinking about my book, where it's like between projects, when I finish a book, the first thing I do is I immediately just have to read a bunch of other stuff to like refill my brain with words that I've used up. And so sometimes with writer's block, it's just like, you're just wrung out like a sponge. And so it's like, just get inspired, watch something brand new you've never seen, read a new book, find a word that you're like, could I make that word work here? Make a list of 10 words to see if you can make them work in a scene, and just try to gamify it a little bit. But it really is just like, trying not to push yourself and not beat yourself up about it's not working out perfectly right now like I wanted it to. And it's like, well, yeah, there's probably a reason. You just need to check in with your creative brain a little bit, and it's probably just tired.
So, trying to think. You said that you read a bunch, and that's absolutely, I think, something we can recommend to everyone. What currently would you say are your favorite books that you're reading that aren't yours?
Oh, that's great. I'm reading, I think that one of the scariest horror books I've ever read. I can only read it in the daytime. It's The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. It's horrifying. It's so great. The writing itself is just so beautiful. But it is so scary, and scary in a way that's not like big monster scary. It's scary like the way people are scary, where you're like, oh no, is this a big monster, or is this just the horror of being a person? And sometimes things are bad. But I literally can only read it in the middle of the day outside. It's terrifying, but wonderful. I'm also reading a book called The Library of the Unwritten by AJ. Yeah. AJ Hawkwith. I always want to say Hawkwith. And it's so good. It's just one of those books that I picked up. I was on my way to get my hair cut, and I stopped into a bookstore because of course I did. And I needed a book thin enough to fit in my purse so I could read it while I was sitting under a blow dryer. And I just grabbed this book, and I was like, oh, it's a book about a library in hell. Why wouldn't I want to read that? And it's incredible. The writing is so good, and the characters are so much fun. It's a book that feels like fan fiction in the best way, where it's just having such a good time. Truly blowing me away.
Yeah, as an amateur writer, just for pleasure, I felt very called out by the.
Yes.
Just to explain to people who are unfamiliar with the book, abandoned pieces of writing, unfinished pieces of writing, end up in hell. Just kept in the library there, unhappy. I just felt really awful then looking at things that I haven't finished.
Right. And then the characters just love their authors so much. And I was like, oh no, every book I've ever abandoned misses me. But such a good time. And they go to different afterlives. They go to Valhalla, and it's just everything that you want Valhalla to be. It's a delight. It's truly just so much fun. And I'm so excited because I halfway through found out it's a series, and I just like, yes, I get to get 2 more of these.
So those two, any others?
What else? I'm also reading Bell Hooks' All About Love right now. I love nonfiction, and I love nonfiction that also doubles as a self-help book. I just think that's the coolest to get any insight into why we are the way we are, especially as a writer, where I'm like, how can I make this a book? But Bell Hooks just has such a beautiful outlook on how we interact with people and what we owe each other. And truly, it's just beautiful writing about what love is and how we share it with each other, and not just interpersonally, but like with our community and through our faith. And it's great. Absolutely fantastic.
All right. When you write, you talked about, various places and various things. Do you ever are you pencil and paper ever, or is it all strictly digital at this point for you?
At this point, it's all digital because I type faster. I type about as fast as I think, and I write so much slower than that. For years, I was someone who like kept a pen and paper in my personal time so I could jot down story ideas. And now with the smartphone, it goes straight into, like, I just put it into a Gmail draft, and then that Gmail draft just gets dropped into the manuscript. So it rushes it through a little bit, but it does, again, it's all of writing for me is tricking my brain into doing more writing. And so I'll sit at my computer, which is a laptop, but I'll hook it up to a monitor and a real keyboard, because the real keyboard makes me feel like a kid again. And I'll just write a little bit faster that way. But if that's not working, then I'll sit on the couch and I'll write on my phone, because then it feels like, the TV's on. I'm just messing around. It could be anything. Yeah. And then my whole house is covered in Post-it notes of me. That's really where my handwritten anything comes in, which is like just little ideas of like, add this, take this out. I have, when I'm editing a book, I'm editing something right now, it's just lists and lists of words I'm not allowed to use anymore, because I just see them coming up in the book over and over again. And I'm like, okay, you've said the word elbow 12 times for some reason, no more elbows from going forward. And so that's what I'm writing down, is usually like, they're more like to-do lists for writing, of like, no more of this, more of this.
Just a reminder to anyone watching on Facebook or on our Zoom call, if you have any questions, just tune in and ask. I actually do have Anastasia is asking, or she just wanted to say she started the book about an hour ago. She's having trouble putting it down to watch this call.
That's great. I would rather that you spend time with the book than with me. It's far more important. It's well thought out. It's conceived of. I'm just making mouth sounds.
You mentioned that you've written fan fiction. Are you aware of anyone who's written fan fiction of your books?
I'm not. I check AO3 like a couple times a year to see if my name has cropped up. I have not yet found any yet. I have hope that one day it will show up.
Anyone is unfamiliar, AO3 is a site called Archive of Our Own. It's a place where people write fan fiction, transformative works. Maybe they're doing it on Wattpad then instead.
Right. There's other sites I haven't checked. I do keep an eye, because my fan fiction is, of course, under a fake name, the fakest of fake names. And so I also check a couple times a year, and I'm always surprised to see that people still comment on things that I posted in 2004. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's still out there. It's still affecting people. It's wild. I adore it. Storytelling in all of its forms is just so beautiful to me. And I love the fan fiction community is just something else. It really is. It's just a place that people go because they care so much. And I absolutely love that. So I do hope that someday someone decides to fanfic one of my works, mostly because I'd be so interested to see what they wanted more information on, or what they wanted to change, because that's always what drew me to fanfic, was like, oh, well, why don't these people live together? Why isn't this part of the story? And as the writer, you just get so one track about things. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what other people would add in or take out.
Mm-hmm. What level of, you talked about the fan fiction community, what level of involvement do you have with your readers on social media, Twitter, Bookstagram, all of that?
A pretty mild involvement, mostly because I'm not a huge social media person. I think it's because I I am of an age where I very much grew up on social media. I had a live journal from the age of 12. And so I just got so oversaturated where I was like, I lived my whole life online until I was like 25. And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll pull back a little bit. My Instagram is mostly where I hear from readers. It's Ms. _ Lily Anderson. I'm Ms. Lily Anderson basically everywhere. Because I was a school librarian for so long. So my students would want to find me on social media. And so I put the Ms. in there because I was like, you don't get to call me Lily, even outside of school. But my Instagram is really just selfies and pictures of whatever book I am reading or that I've recently purchased because I'm also a collector. And so I love hearing from readers, but I also, as a reader, understand how little I reach out to authors. And so I will hype up a book and then never tag the author in it. And so anytime I get an email or a picture through Bookstagram, I'm always like, oh my gosh, like it just feels so good. And yeah, you should definitely reach out to authors, by the way, if you can. We love it. Otherwise we're just weirdos sitting behind a computer screen.
So if a young writer came to you and asked for advice about becoming a professional writer someday, what advice would you give to them?
I would definitely say, read everything. Read every genre, read every category, read anything you can get your hands on, because you should be aware of what's already out there and how people are doing it, and also just the breadth of what books can be. And in that same vein, write everything, write whatever you can, as much as you can, finish your projects. That's the biggest thing is everyone can start a book and it's so hard to finish one because if you don't, it's perfect in your head forever. And the second you start to put it down on paper, it changes and it gets away from you and it becomes something else. And you have to learn to love that something else that it is. And I think for a lot of us, you think of a story and you're like, oh, that's perfect. I want to keep it just like that, where it's untouchable. And you have to get used to putting it down and being like, oh, it became something else. Oh, at the last second, I realized it was about this other thing. Or you have to learn how to be done and walk away and start something new. Instead of jumping from project to project. And no one likes to hear this, but my other advice is don't publish the first thing you write. Write 3 more things. And if you still want to publish the first thing you write after that, fine. But publishing is a business and it's forever, books last forever. And so when I finished my first book when I was 16, I was like, this is it. I'm going to publish it. And I looked for an agent and I got all of the rejections and I kept writing new things. And now looking back, I'm like, I wouldn't want that to be one of the things I have to list on my resume. That's not who I am as an author now. It's who I was as a person at 16, but you're going to become such a different person with different values. So you can definitely hold on to those things, but they don't have to define your career. And share with your friends. That was the thing that I liked about writing early on was I would finish a book. And instead of trying to publish it, I would just share it with whoever wanted to read it. And then you get to know what people like about your work and what people don't like about your work. And it gets you in the editing headspace before you get an editor. And editors are ruthless. They will tell you straight up when something doesn't work or isn't realistic or doesn't need to be there. And so it's nicer usually coming from like your best friend who's like, why did you go on this 20-page detour down, why do you describe every single piece of clothing this person is wearing, which I'm definitely guilty of. I think it's a Babysitters Club thing. They have like the Claudia Kishi mentality of like, but you have to know the color of her socks. And my readers and my editors have always been like, you don't need that. But you don't know what your little writer quirks are until you share. And that's the joy of books and of storytelling is sharing them with other people and seeing how something that used to live in your brain can live outside of your brain.
Just reminding anyone who's watching, get your questions in. If you have anything to ask about writing, becoming a writer, or about this book specifically, we'd love to hear. Since your book was part of the summer scares, what's something that scares you?
Moths. I don't like moths at all. I am pretty ambivalent about most bugs, but there's something about moths are like, they're dusty and they're like beefy for a flying bug. So I feel bad. I don't like to swat them because it feels like hitting a person. And I don't care for them at all. It is like my number one non-existential fear is there's nothing worse than like a moth being loose in my house. I'm like convinced it's gonna fly in my hair or in my ears. I don't like them.
No. I didn't really have a problem with them before, but now I do.
Welcome to the party.
Is that why, Anastasia is asking, is that why Mila outsourced catching them in the book?
Yes. It's one of those, like, I was like, oh, yep, they're gonna, because they seem like something that would be a spell ingredient. They seem kind of witchy. It seems like something you should like. And I was like, no, yucky, make a child do it. Like someone who doesn't mind touching a bunch of yucky moths. Yeah, so that is, I forgot that was in there. Yes, exactly. I think there's like 7 of them. And I was like, ugh, what could be worse than a jar full of 7 moths?
Which of the characters do you think you put most of yourself into, would you say? Was it Mila or
it's definitely Mila. This is, I mean, as much as anytime you write anything, people are like, oh, you're this character, you're like this main character. This is the book that like my dad read an early copy and was just like, this is just you. And I was like, that's not true. It's not. But she is a lot like what I was like in high school. A lot of this sort of like prickly, angry, swears a lot, wears a lot of makeup to keep people away from her, only has one friend. Like there's a lot of me in Mila. And I think that's why I wanted to write the book, was just the idea of who you are as a teenager who's grieving and how hard that is and how isolating it feels. I only know through my own lens of like going through something difficult as a teenager and feeling like there aren't any adults around who understand and you can only go to your friends. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of me in Mila, as much as I am also all of the characters. Because I was also sort of a mean girl like June, which is part of why I wanted to sort of have a mean girl redemption arc story of mean girls don't know they're mean. They don't know anyone's listening to them. And they don't know that their views are limited. That's just how they've learned to cope or to insulate themselves from how big and scary the world is. So yeah, I'm definitely a little bit of everyone, but Mila and June are sort of the split halves of like, I would say like Mila's definitely me until I'm like 16. And then from like 16 to 20, I'm more of a June. And then hopefully on the other side, I'm neither of them. And I'm like a nice adult lady.
Not like it. Did you have a Toby in your life? Or
I did not.
Sure.
Toby,
sure how to feel about Toby at our live discussion about it.
Toby's a weird one. Yeah, no, Toby is based a little bit on my first tattoo artist, who was like this grizzled old biker lady, who I never knew how to feel about, or was like, I don't get you. Who's had a lot of advice and a lot of like, this is the way the world works, but like would she like put on Disney movies when she was tattooing you to like keep you calm, but at the same time would just like tell you horrible stories. And so, yeah, she's perplexing. But I think again, it's that sort of, as a teenager, you don't really know what to make of the adults around you. Are they trying to help? Do they care? Are they good? Are they bad? Who knows? They're just there, and you have to sort of learn how to judge them. especially when you don't have like super present parents.
I think that I found that really genuine coming from the characters. That sort of trouble trusting adults, that perspective. I mean, we don't really know, how any of the adults would have reacted, but that's honest. I think a lot of teenagers would feel like they wouldn't understand and wouldn't go to them.
Right. It was a choice to not, no one's parents are shown on the page. You hear about people's parents, and at one point you hear a voicemail from Riley's mom, but that's it. And it's that sort of feeling of, as a teenager, you're really in your own community. You're sort of like, you're on your own, you've sort of been thrust into the world, and high school especially is just like, teenagers just live with other teenagers and they go into the world with other teenagers, especially once you can drive. And I think especially when something bad happens and your parents don't know how to talk to you about it. So for Mila, that the loss of Riley, and her parents go to the funeral with her but don't sit with her because they want to be up close, and she's like, I don't want people to look at me. That feeling of just like being slightly removed because your emotions are so big is what I remember about being a teenager. Granted, I was also a theater kid, so my feelings were very loud. But I really wanted to highlight that in this book, the feeling of like, how do you know how to trust an adult when there aren't adults around to be like, yeah, that seems like a good adult. Like, I think maybe if Mila's mom went with her to the Wiccan store and met Toby, you might have more of a lens as to like how we're supposed to feel about her. But just on your own, you're like, maybe this is just what old witches are like. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're about the 45-minute mark. Is there anything else maybe that's come up in your head as we've talked that you'd like to share, or any other future advice for some of our young readers and writers?
We haven't talked at all about getting an agent. That's usually the first step when you're trying to get published, when you're like, this is going to be my job. You look for a literary agent. They are sort of your liaison into the publishing community. They go between you and editors at the big publishing houses to sell your work. My agent has been my agent since I started. Her name's Laura Zatz. She runs her own agency in Minnesota. I found her because I Googled literary agent and Buffy the Vampire Slayer because I wanted an agent who understood my references. And I was like, I need a good, solid, nerdy agent who is going to look at my debut book full of just the geekiest references and understand them. And I found Laura. I had queried, probably 5 other agents, and I got a couple other offers, a couple of denials. It was the second time I was querying. I started querying when I was like 18 and was like, I'm going to publish my first book. And that did not go well. It was also back when agents weren't taking email queries. So I had to print out my 300-page book at FedEx and go to the post office and have it mailed to New York. We don't do that anymore, thankfully. But yeah, you look for an agent who's going to be on your side, who's going to represent you through your career. And there's great services for that online through Query Tracker and the manuscript wish list. Just find people who are looking for what you are offering and who will vibe with your work and be your cheerleader and fight for your money and all of it. And that's the first real huge step in becoming a writer after you've written something that you want to be published, is looking for an agent who will work with you and be your business partner.
Yeah, that was always the thing that intimidated me when I was a teenager thinking about writing. Although these days I've seen like pitch parties on Twitter where people throw out pitches for their books and agents are looking at all of the hashtag.
That's hugely helpful. Twitter has its good side and its bad side. But Pitch Wars, DV Pit, all those, like, there's a variety of pitch contests that you can, you summarize your book into like a little tiny blurb with the hashtag, and if agents are interested, they respond and say, oh yeah, email me, your query or the first 30 pages or whatever it is. And that can be a neat way in. But the slush pile, which is just cold querying directly into their inboxes, is how most of us get represented. That's definitely how I got my agent. It's how I think almost everyone I know got their agent, just by getting in those query trenches and trying a bunch of different things. Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering these questions. We've had many people come and join us on Facebook watching. Just want to remind everyone that we still have copies of the book if you want to come in and borrow one from us at the library. We have lots more of the Summer Scares stuff still coming. Tomorrow we're having our book discussion of The Diviners by Libba Bray, and then the adult one, I forget what book they're on for their second book, but that'll be on Thursday. And then next month we've got all 3 books, the final 3 books from all age groups being done. And you can still sign up to do the crafts. Ours that we're doing for the teens is based around the idea of zombies. We're making Frankenstuffies, disassembled stuffed animals and reassembling them into others. You can register for that at the library Facebook page, and maybe you can come in and select your own parts if you choose. Actually, not at the library Facebook page, at the library's website, racinelibrary.info. We would love to have anyone come out for any of the book discussions. Even if you haven't read any of the books, come out anyway, because maybe you will find a new favorite. Maybe the discussion itself will inspire you to read the books. So once again, we really thank you for joining us. This was amazing, and I hope that everybody enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so upset that I'm in California and cannot come make a Frankenstuffy. I hope that you post pictures maybe on your website, because I will definitely keep an eye out. That just sounds like the coolest project.
I think we're going to have a good time with it. All right. So with that, we wish everyone a good evening, and we'll see you at the library bright and early tomorrow. So I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream here. I'm going to look for it.